There comes a moment in every human life when a quiet voice rises from within and asks a difficult question. How long will you continue to live beneath your own potential? We are not defeated by the world before us. We are defeated by the world within us. The fear that whispers we are not enough. The doubt that tells us to stay small. The comfort that keeps us chained to yesterday. Too many people spend their lives negotiating with their weaknesses instead of confronting them. But history has never been changed by those who chose safety over courage. The weak self is not your enemy, it is simply your past, trying to remain in your present. It is made of old fears, old doubts, and old wounds that once served a purpose but no longer deserve to rule your future. There was a time when hesitation protected you, when silence kept you safe, and when small dreams felt wiser than bold ones. But that time has passed. To keep living by yesterday's fears is to deny tomorrow its chance to be born. Growth is not the rejection of who you were, it is the respectful farewell to what no longer serves who you are becoming. Many people spend their lives in quiet negotiation with their past. They say, I will try instead of I will do. They say, one day instead of today. They allow the echoes of old failures to speak louder than the promise of new beginnings. Yet a nation cannot be built by the rules of a former age, and a human spirit cannot be shaped by the limits of an old story. You are allowed to outgrow the version of yourself that once struggled. You are allowed to step beyond the boundaries that were drawn by fear. Do not misunderstand this truth. The weak self is not evil. It is only afraid. It learned to survive by staying small, by avoiding risk, by choosing comfort over courage. But survival is not the same as living. There comes a moment when you must thank that old self for carrying you this far, and then gently, firmly take the wheel of your own destiny. You do not move forward by waging war on who you were. You move forward by choosing who you will be. Every act of courage is a declaration to your past that it no longer controls your future. Every disciplined choice is a quiet promise to yourself that you are worthy of more. When you wake up early to work on a dream, when you speak truth instead of hiding, when you persist despite the voice that says give up, you are not being cruel to yourself. You are being faithful to your highest potential. You are saying, I will not allow my history to limit my destiny. There will be days when the old fears return. They will knock at the door of your mind and ask to be let in. Do not be surprised by this. The past always tries to revisit the present, but you must meet it with calm strength and say, you may speak, but you may not decide. For the future belongs not to the loudest fear, but to the quiet, steady courage that keeps moving forward. A person who commits to their future does not deny their past, they transform it. They turn pain into wisdom, failure into instruction, and doubt into determination. This is how a life is rebuilt. This is how a spirit becomes free. You are not here to be the prisoner of who you used to be. You are here to become who you were always meant to be. And that journey begins the moment you stop negotiating with the past and start standing fully in the promise of your future. Discipline is the quiet force that turns intention into reality. It is not loud, and it is not glamorous, yet it is the foundation upon which every strong life is built. Many people believe freedom is the ability to do whatever they desire in the moment, but this is a misunderstanding. True freedom is the ability to do what is necessary even when you do not feel like it. The weak version of yourself lives for comfort and convenience. The stronger version lives for purpose. Discipline is the bridge between these two. Every day, you stand at a crossroads between what is easy and what is right. The easy path invites you to rest when you should rise, to delay when you should act, and to settle when you should strive. The disciplined path demands effort, patience, and sacrifice. Yet it is only on this harder road that true power is found. When you choose discipline, you are not punishing yourself, you are teaching yourself to become reliable. You are proving that your word to yourself means something. Weakness does not disappear in a single moment. It fades each time you keep a promise to yourself. Each morning you choose to begin rather than postpone. Each time you complete a task rather than abandon it, you are slowly taking control of your own destiny. Discipline is not about perfection. It is about consistency. It is about showing up even when the fire of motivation has gone cold and only the quiet commitment remains. There will be moments when your mind will try to bargain with you. It will say just this once, or you deserve a break, or tomorrow will be easier. These whispers are not evil, but they are dangerous. They come from the part of you that fears growth. Discipline is the voice that calmly responds, not today. It is the steady hand that guides you forward when emotions pull you back. Through discipline, you build self-respect. When you keep your word to yourself, you begin to trust yourself. And when you trust yourself, you no longer feel small in the face of challenges. You walk with the quiet confidence of someone who knows they can endure. The disciplined person is not without fear, but they do not allow fear to decide their actions. History has shown us that great change is never the result of a single heroic act. It is the result of countless small disciplined choices made over time. A nation is rebuilt one brick at a time. A life is transformed one habit at a time. You do not need to be extraordinary today. You need to be consistent. You need to do the small, difficult things that others avoid. In this way, discipline becomes your weapon against weakness, not a weapon of violence, but a weapon of self-mastery. With it, you cut away excuses. With it, you break the chains of procrastination. With it, you carve a path toward the person you are meant to become. Each disciplined action is a quiet declaration that the stronger version of you is taking control. And when you remain faithful to that discipline day after day, the weak version of yourself has no choice but to fade into the past. Comfort is a gentle place, but it is not a powerful one. It wraps itself around you like a warm blanket, making you feel safe, but slowly it begins to limit your movement, your vision, and your growth. The weak version of yourself is deeply attached to this feeling of ease. It prefers what is familiar over what is possible. Yet nothing of greatness has ever been born from what is merely familiar. Every meaningful achievement, every act of courage, and every transformation begins in the uneasy space where comfort ends. When you remain in comfort for too long, your dreams begin to shrink. You stop asking what you could become and start settling for what you already are. The days begin to repeat themselves, and without realizing it, you start living a life that is predictable instead of purposeful. This is not because you lack ability, but because you have allowed convenience to silence your ambition. Comfort whispers that there is no need to struggle, no need to risk, no need to push beyond what feels safe. But it is in the struggle that strength is discovered, and it is in risk that possibility is revealed. Discomfort is not your enemy, it is the doorway to your evolution. Each time you choose to do something that feels difficult, you expand the boundaries of who you are. Each time you face what you fear, you take a step toward freedom. The path to becoming your best self will always feel uncertain because certainty belongs to what is already known. Growth belongs to what is yet to be discovered. The comfort zone promises peace, but it delivers stagnation. It tells you that you have done enough, that you should not demand more from yourself. Yet deep within, you know there is more waiting to be expressed through you. That quiet unrest you sometimes feel is not dissatisfaction. It is the call of your potential asking to be taken seriously. When you ignore that call, you do not find peace, you find regret. To step into discomfort is to choose a higher standard for your life. It is to wake up earlier when your body asks for sleep, to speak when your voice trembles, to try when failure is possible. These moments are not easy, but they are sacred because they shape your character. They teach you resilience, they teach you courage, and they teach you that you are capable of far more than the comfort you own. Clung to. You do not leave comfort behind all at once. You leave it behind one brave decision at a time. Each small step outside what is familiar weakens the grip of fear and strengthens the muscle of confidence. Over time, what once felt impossible becomes normal, and what once seemed frightening becomes manageable. This is how a person grows into their power. The world does not need you to remain where you are. It needs you to rise into who you can be. Comfort may feel like safety, but it is also a cage. If you want to touch your true potential, you must be willing to walk beyond its walls. And when you do, you will discover that the discomfort you once feared is the very thing that sets you free. When you take responsibility for your life, something remarkable begins to happen. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances and start seeing yourself as a creator of outcomes. Responsibility is not a burden, it is a doorway. It opens the path from helplessness to power. The weak version of yourself survives by blaming the world, the economy, the past, other people, bad luck. But the stronger version of you understands a simple and liberating truth. What you own, you can change. Blame feels comforting because it removes pressure. It allows you to say, "It is not my fault." And in that moment, you feel lighter. But that lightness is an illusion, because what you do not take responsibility for, you also surrender control over. When you give away responsibility, you give away your ability to improve your life. You become a passenger instead of a driver. Power begins the moment you decide to sit behind the wheel. Owning your life does not mean denying that hardship exists. It does not mean pretending the world is fair. It means acknowledging reality without allowing it to define your limits. Two people can face the same storm, yet one uses it as an excuse to quit, while the other uses it as a reason to rise. The difference is not luck. The difference is responsibility. One says, "Why did this happen to me?" The other says, "What will I do now?" Every time you take responsibility, you reclaim a piece of your future. You stop waiting for permission to become better. You stop hoping that someone else will fix what only you can change. This is not an easy path because it requires honesty. It requires you to look at your habits, your choices, and your patterns and say, "I created this and I can create something different." That moment of truth can be uncomfortable, but it is also empowering. Responsibility builds self-respect. When you keep your promises, when you show up even when no one is watching, when you admit mistakes and correct them, you begin to trust yourself. And when you trust yourself, you no longer feel small. You move through the world with the quiet strength of someone who knows they are not dependent on excuses to survive. The weak self waits for conditions to be perfect. The strong self creates progress in imperfect conditions. Responsibility is what turns setbacks into lessons and failures into guidance. It allows you to ask better questions. Not who is to blame, but what is to be learned. In that shift, you transform struggle into growth. To take responsibility is to claim ownership of your story. It is to say, "This is my life and I will shape it with my actions." That is where true power lives, not in controlling others, but in mastering yourself. When you step into responsibility, the weak version of you has no place to hide, and in its place, a stronger, wiser, and more capable you begins to rise. To become someone your old self cannot survive is not an act of destruction, but an act of rebirth. It is the quiet and courageous decision to no longer allow your former limitations to define your future. Every human being carries within them many versions of who they have been: the fearful child, the uncertain dreamer, the cautious survivor. These versions were necessary at one time, but they are not meant to remain forever. Growth requires that we gently yet firmly step beyond them. Your old self will try to follow you into your future. It will bring with it familiar habits, familiar excuses, and familiar doubts. It will remind you of who you used to be when you were afraid to try, when you chose safety over possibility, and when you doubted your own worth. It will speak in a familiar voice and tell you that change is dangerous, that you are asking for too much, that you should stay where you are. But you must understand this truth: the voice of fear always grows louder when you are about to grow, to rise into your next level. You must become a person who thinks differently, acts differently, and believes differently. You cannot carry old mindsets into new dreams. A small vision cannot support a great future. The habits that once kept you comfortable will not carry you to where you're meant to be. This is why change feels uncomfortable, because it asks you to let go of the identity you once wore. Becoming someone new is not about pretending to be better than you are. It is about allowing yourself to become more than you were. Each time you choose discipline over delay, courage over comfort, and truth over excuses, you are quietly building a new version of yourself. That new self is stronger, calmer, and more focused. It does not seek approval from the past. It moves forward with purpose. There will be moments when you miss your old self. You may miss the ease of not trying, the safety of not risking failure, the simplicity of not demanding much from yourself. But you must remember that those comforts came at the cost of your potential. You were never meant to live small. You were meant to grow, to stretch, and to rise. When you outgrow your old self, some people will not recognize you anymore. Some situations will no longer fit you. Some conversations will feel empty. This is not loss, it is alignment. You are simply stepping into a life that matches who you are becoming. To become someone your old self cannot survive is to choose a higher standard for your life. It is to say, I will no longer live by the limits of who I was. And when you hold that standard day after day, the weak version of you fades. In its place stands a person who is ready to meet the future with strength, dignity, and unshakable purpose.